There you will find Ahu Hanga, a massive ahu of 86 meters and the home of 8 moai. Ahu Hanga Te has not been restored, and there you will find the moai as they were left after the Civil War, all facing the ground with their pukeo scattered. In front of Ahu Hanga Te, there is a large rock circle that used to be a home for large ceremonies and commemorations. There is also a puna, a watering hole, that was made when RAPA NUI was leased to the Williamson Balfour Company for farming sheep. In front of the platform, on the ground, there is a large circle of stones about 10 meters in diameter called paina. In other times, in its interior, certain commemorative rituals were performed to honor different members of the family. Near the ahu, there are other interesting archaeological remains. One of them is a puna or water pond built at the time of the exploiting company at the beginning of the 20th century, and from where the name of Vaihu comes, meaning place of water. The Ahu Akahanga stands on the left in front of the sea, a few meters from the agitated waves that beat against the rocks. This large platform of 18 meters in length has not been restored, which allows to get an idea of the state in which all the Ahu were in the epoch of decadence of the island. In most destroyed platforms, the statues lie face down with their hidden faces and their turned backs. However, in Ahu Akahanga, the 13 moai, which are between 5 and 7 meters in size, were knocked down both face up and face down. This allows to observe better its features and its carving. It is impressive to see these stone giants in such a vulnerable position, when once they stood proudly on their pedestal. In front of the platform, there are several of the pukeo or headdresses of volcanic red scoria that top the statues. On the right, very close to the shore, there is a fallen moai forward that does not have carved eyes, but has preserved its features very well in spite of erosion. In the back of the ahu, there is a crematorium and a rustic ramp to disembark canoes. Here it is possible to have a close view of the faces of the statues that fell on their backs. It also highlights a small moai of about 2 meters that lies on its back inside a circle of stones. Its rustic carving and its advanced state of erosion suggest that it is one of the first statues that were carved in Rano, Raraku. According to oral tradition, the first king of the island, the legendary Ariki Hotu Matue, was buried in this place. His sons moved him from the top of the Rano Cow volcano, where he had his final resting place, to Akahanga. A legend says that after burying him under a mound of stones, Tuyu Mahiki, the eldest son, cut off Hotume's head and buried it between some stones. Someone discovered it sometime later, and after that the Ariki, Tuyu Ko Ihu stole the skull of its last owner and hid it in his house in Ahu Tepu. Finally, it was recovered by the legitimate descendants of the king to benefit from the mana or spiritual power that emanated from such a precious object. The excavations carried out have not yet found any vestige of the ancient king. Akahanga is located in the center of the south coast of Easter Island. According to some researchers, the choice of this place as a burial site for Hotu Matue may be due to the fact that the supposed power emanating from the Ariki could be evenly distributed to both sides of the island, generating good harvests and fishing for all the people. Curiously, Ava Ray Pua, the sister of Hotu Matue and wife of the aforementioned Ariki Tuko Iu, was buried at the opposite end of the island, in Ahu Tepu, her place of residence. Recent research has established an astronomical and geometric relationship between these two sites. The two sites where both siblings of royal origin were buried are located at the ends of an axis between the dawn of the summer solstice and the dusk of the winter solstice, relating symbolically their resting place to the annual solar cycle. The contemplation of the imposing Ahu Tongariki with the Pacific Ocean on its back is the fulfilled dream of most travelers who cross the planet to reach Easter Island. The image of Tongariki, together with that of the statues of the nearby Raraku volcano, is the one that has most spread in books, magazines, and documentaries of Easter Island. And, since its restoration, this colossal structure has become a symbol and the maximum exponent of the collective imagination about Rapa Nui. The history of Tongariki mixes mythological stories, wars between clans and settlements of tribes that date back to the 10th century. In the large esplanade that extends in front of the Ahu, there have been remains of boathouses or hairpaina, old hearths or umupe, and hundreds of petroglyphs engraved in the volcanic rock that reflect the importance of this extraordinary place. It is believed that Tongariki was the socio-political and religious center of Hotu-Iti, one of the two great clans that grouped the tribes of the eastern sector of the island. The first human occupation dates from the year 900 AD, and it is related to the first phase of a first Ahu. The impressive final monument is the result of a successive series of modifications and extensions carried out throughout history, which show the technical mastery achieved. Ahu Tongariki is the largest ceremonial structure built on Easter Island and the most important megalithic monument in all of Polynesia. It represents the zenith of the sacred constructions called Ahu Moai that were developed in Rapa Nui for more than 500 years. The central platform, whose axis is oriented to the rising sun of the summer solstice, measures almost 100 meters long, and with its wings, or original lateral extensions, reached a total length of 200 meters. During the last final phase of construction of the ceremonial altar, Ahu Tongariki held 15 moai, which made it the platform with the largest number of images of the whole island. Unfortunately, as happened with the rest of the ceremonial platforms of the island, the moai were knocked down from the Ahu during the violent episodes that took place between the different island clans at the time of decadence of the Rapa Nui culture. It is believed that this period began after 1500 AD, reaching its peak at the end of the 17th century. It is not known with certainty when the statues of the Ahu Tongariki were demolished, but according to the testimonies of the first European navigators who arrived at the island, it seems that these were no longer standing when they arrived at the beginning of the 18th century. However, the place continued to be used as a cemetery until the conversion of the population to Catholicism in the second half of the 19th century. The variety in the shapes and sizes of the statues is striking. Here, contrary to what happens in other platforms such as Ahu Now Now or Ahu Akivi, they are all different. There are thin, thick, high and low, and even the expressions seem different. It is possible, as some theories point out, that they reflect in this way the character or features of each represented ancestor. Although aesthetic differences are more likely to be due to the different times in which they were manufactured. During the reconstruction, some old heads were found that show a more round and natural shape, but it seems that with the passage of time, the features became more and more stylized. All the moai statues were carved in volcanic tuff from the quarries of the Raraku volcano, located 1 kilometer northwest. Despite their relative closeness, it is still not explained how they were able to transport to Tongariki these huge giants that have an average weight of 40 tons. The Raraku volcano is one of the most incredible and extraordinary archaeological sites on the planet. In this magical place full of mystery, the moai were made, the giant statues that have made Easter Island famous worldwide. The enormous figures and the quarries of the volcano surpass any expectation and get the traveler to be speechless when he contemplates one of the most fascinating wonders of humanity. The name derives from the word Rano, which in the NUI language refers to volcanoes that have an inner lagoon. It is believed that the term Raraku, which means striped or grooved, refers to the large grooves that the south face of the mountain presents, although it could also be related to the name of an old character who, according to tradition, finished with all the evil spirits of the island, murdering them with a moko or wooden lizard. In addition to its great archaeological relevance, Raraku is one of the most interesting volcanic centers of Easter Island from a geological point of view. This volcanic cone, now extinct, was formed more than 300,000 years ago as a result of the eruptive activity of the Mauna Teravaka and Pua Katiki volcanoes. The Raraku has a maximum height of 160 meters on its southeast edge, and its crater presents an elliptical shape whose largest diameter measures about 700 meters. In addition to its great archaeological relevance, Raraku is one of the most interesting volcanic centers of Easter Island from a geological point of view. This volcanic cone, now extinct, was formed more than 300,000 years ago as a result of the eruptive activity of the Mauna Teravaka and Pua Katiki volcanoes. The Raraku has a maximum height of 160 meters on its southeast edge, and its crater presents an elliptical shape whose largest diameter measures about 700 meters. The previous geological details explain why Raraku became the quarry where almost all of the 1,000 statues that have been found on Easter Island were sculpted. Here the moai were carved and then they were taken to the ahu or ceremonial platforms, distributed along the entire coast to honor the memory of the ancestors. In the quarry, which in total is more than 800 meters long, there are many empty niches from which the statues that moved to the ahu were extracted. But there are still many figures in Raraku. Between the finished figures that rest at the foot of the volcano and those that still remain on the outer and inner slope of the same, a total of 397 moai have been counted. This is the area of the island where the largest number of statues is concentrated, almost 40% of the total. Anakena Beach, the main and most beautiful beach on Easter Island, is considered the cradle of Rapa Nui history and culture, since according to legend, it was here that the first king Hotu Matue landed. A possible meaning of Anakena could be cave, Ana, in Rapa Nui language, of Kina, an autochthonous name by which the masked booby, Suladactylatra, is known, a seabird that still nests in the island. Over time, Anakena became an important nucleus of population throughout history, home of the Royal Miru tribe and meeting place of the masters of the ancient Rongo writing. Nowadays, important archaeological sites can be observed in Anakena, witnesses of the great cultural, social, and religious development that there was here. The oldest remains date from about 1200 AD, and they are constituted by ceremonial centers on and under the surface, habitation sites, and other vestiges of primordial relevance to understand the past of the island. In Anakena, as in other important villages of the island, several ahus, or ceremonial platforms, were built. Today, only two of them are distinguished: Ahu Atur Huki and Ahu Now Now. Ahuakivi is an archaeological site with singular characteristics. Due to its unique location, its studied astronomical orientation, and the restoration work carried out in it, which was a milestone in the recent history of Easter Island. The 7 statues were transported from the quarry of the Raraku volcano located 15 kilometers away, through an irregular terrain and using an unknown method. These imposing figures represent the archetypal form of a moai and have almost the average height and weight, 4.5 meters and 5 tons, of the statues found on the platforms. The statues present a careful uniformity between them, something that does not occur in Tahai or Tongariki, which gives the monument a sense of harmony and balance. It is said that the moai of Ahuakivi are the only statues that look at the sea of the whole island, since the rest turns their back on the ocean. And although, if they are looked with perspective, this is true, the truth is that they are oriented like the rest of the platforms. That is, their faces look towards the esplanade that extends before them, where formerly there was a nearby village. Therefore, the images of Akivi were placed, like the others, to watch over and protect the inhabitants of the village through the influence of their mana or mystical power. In Akivi, the axis of the platform was oriented from north to south, getting the faces of the moai look exactly at the point where the sun sets during the equinox of the austral spring, and their backs face the sun of the dawn during the autumn equinox. Puna Pau is a small extinct volcano, located about 7 kilometers northeast of Hongaroa, whose name refers to a source or well of water that should have existed in its surroundings. This crater is part of a set of parasitic cones that emerged during the eruptions of Maunga Teravaka, the youngest and highest volcano on Easter Island. Inside the Puna Pau crater, there is a quarry of red scoria that was once an important source of raw material for the islanders. The red scoria, or hani hani, as it is known in the Rapa Nui language, is a type of volcanic ash of great porosity and scarce hardness, which shows a reddish color due to the iron oxide present in its composition. The characteristics of this soft and easy-to-carve material, which made it unsuitable for construction, were used to manufacture various types of objects, some very special. Among them there are about 20 statues of small size, containers for water, called tahita, blocks of ornamental type, and eyes of moai. Although there are other deposits of red scum on the island, the Puna Pau quarry was the most important of all, and is believed to be the origin of most of the known objects carved in hani hani. This relevance may possibly be due to the strong reddish color of its material, since in Rapa Nui culture the color red is a symbolic color associated with sacred rites and mana or spiritual strength. According to the latest excavations, during the 14th and 17th centuries, an intense work of extraction was developed in the Puna Pau quarry, whose main motive was the elaboration of the pakeo, or cylindrical headdresses that crown some of the statues of Easter Island. Anakena is a volcanic tube, about 50 meters long, formed thousands of years ago when the still liquid lava continued to flow underground. This cavern, like that of Anatepora, was used as Anakena or refuge cave during the struggles that took place centuries ago between the different clans of the island. In the only access available, camouflaged in the ground, you can see the slabs, paina, that were used to reduce the width of the natural mouth of the cave. In this way, a rather narrow passageway was constructed, which allowed a better defensive control to possible invaders. The name of Anakena could be related to a sad love story. According to legend, this cave was the last hiding place of a young couple who fled from the punishment for their forbidden love. So that they were not found, they covered the entrance from inside, and there they remained until his death. It is not known whether they died of hunger or threw themselves into the sea from above, since their bodies were never found.